That single sentence still feels like a knife turning in my chest. People often talk about betrayal from strangers, from friends, even from partners, but nothing rips you apart like betrayal from your own mother. I grew up believing she was my safe place. My biological father left when I was young, and my mother remarried when I was still small enough to believe that adults knew best. My stepfather came into our lives wearing the mask of a provider, a man who claimed he would love us and keep us safe. I was desperate for stability, and my mother was desperate for companionship. At first, it seemed like maybe we had found both. But masks eventually slip. His slipped sooner than anyone could have imagined. The first time he hit me, I was 9. It wasn't a slap or a push, it was a full, bone-rattling blow that knocked me to the floor. I remember staring at the carpet fibers, willing myself not to cry, because even at that age I had already learned that tears didn't bring comfort in that house. They brought more rage. When my mother saw the mark on my face, she didn't gasp or rush to me. She didn't cradle my cheek and demand answers. Instead, she sighed. She told me not to provoke him. As though my existence had somehow lit the fuse of his violence. That was the first time she used the words that would become a prison sentence for me, family business. From then on, everything became family business. My bruises were family business. My swollen lip was family business. The way I flinched when someone raised their voice at school, family business. She wore those words like armor, shielding herself from shame, from responsibility, from truth. And me? I wore the consequences. By the time I was a teenager, I had perfected the art of silence. I walked softly, I spoke less, I tried to vanish in my own home. But abusers don't need reasons to hurt. They invent them. He invented them daily. The way I looked at him too long. The way I didn't look at him at all. A dish left in the sink. A laugh too loud in the wrong moment. My body became a canvas for his anger. The worst part? My mother saw everything. And she chose him. Over and over again, she chose him. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe I was broken. If maybe I deserved this. I would hear my mother's voice in my head, telling me not to exaggerate, not to stir up drama, not to ruin the family. I thought love meant swallowing pain so deep that no one else had to see it. But then something shifted. It wasn't one big moment of bravery, like people sometimes imagine. It was a series of small cracks in the wall of silence I had built around myself. A teacher noticed the way I winced when I lifted my backpack. A friend asked why I wore long sleeves in summer. The school nurse raised an eyebrow when she saw the purple blooming across my ribs. They didn't accuse me of lying. They didn't dismiss me. They looked at me like I mattered. And that look was enough to plant a seed. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I wasn't crazy. If maybe what was happening behind closed doors wasn't normal. If maybe my pain actually counted for something. I held onto that thought like a lifeline. But it still took years before I spoke. The night that finally broke me is seared into my memory. I was 17. My stepfather came home drunk, his anger already simmering before he even opened the door. I don't remember what set him off. Maybe I breathed too loudly, maybe I looked tired, maybe nothing at all. All I know is that his fists found me again, and this time, something inside me snapped. I crawled into the bathroom afterward, locking the door, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My face barely looked human. My eye was swelling shut, my lips split wide open. I pressed a towel to my mouth and thought, if I stay here, I will die. Not maybe. Not someday. Soon. That's when I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, while my mother pretended nothing had happened, I walked into my school counselor's office. My legs shook, my voice cracked, but the words came out anyway. I told her everything. The police were called. A report was filed. For the first time in nearly a decade, the truth was out. I thought maybe, just maybe, my mother would finally stand beside me. But I was wrong. When the officers came to the house, when they asked questions, when they looked at me with concern instead of suspicion, my mother didn't stand next to me. She stood next to him. She called me a liar. She told them I was dramatic, that I was trying to tear the family apart, that I was making trouble. Later, when we were alone, she spat the words at me like venom. You've ruined everything. You've brought shame on this family. You're not my daughter anymore. In that moment, I lost two parents. And yet, a strange kind of clarity settled over me. For so long, I had been desperate for her love, bending myself into nothing just to keep her approval. But now I understood, her love was conditional. It had always been conditional. And I was done begging for scraps of it. Being disowned by your own mother doesn't happen all at once. It unravels in layers, each one cutting deeper than the last. After the police report, the house felt like a war zone. My stepfather's glares turned colder, sharper, and my mother's silence turned into open hostility. She slammed doors, muttered insults under her breath, and made sure I knew that in her eyes, I was the villain. When the officers returned a few days later with more questions, she refused to cooperate. She told them I was an attention seeker, that I had always exaggerated, that maybe I was even hurting myself to frame him. I stood there, my bruises still fresh, listening to the woman who gave me life twist reality into a story that painted me as the monster. It was surreal. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand how she could look at my face and deny what she saw. But another part of me already knew the answer. She needed him more than she needed me. He was her safety net, her companion, her illusion of stability. I was expendable. And so she threw me away. The official disownment came one night when she cornered me in the kitchen. Her eyes were blazing, not with grief, but with fury. She told me I had humiliated her, humiliated the family, that I had no right to destroy what she had built. Then she said it, the words that burned hotter than any slap ever could, you are no longer my child. I thought I would collapse. But instead, I stood there, numb, frozen in place, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. I didn't beg. I didn't apologize. Something inside me had finally cracked open, and through that crack came light. She wanted me to regret speaking out. But I didn't. Not even then. The system, though, wasn't as clean as I had hoped. My stepfather was arrested briefly, questioned, but he was released quickly. He had charm when he needed it, a way of weaving lies that made him look like the victim of a rebellious teenager. My mother backed him up with every word. Together, they built a wall of denial that felt impossible to break through. The case dragged. Social workers got involved. I was placed with a temporary foster family while things were being sorted. For the first time in my life, I slept in a house where footsteps in the hallway didn't make me shake. Where slamming doors weren't followed by fists. But peace came with guilt. At night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, I thought about my mother. I wondered if she was eating dinner without me, if she even noticed the empty chair. I wondered if she missed me at all, or if she was glad I was gone. The guilt gnawed at me, whispering that maybe I had gone too far, maybe she was right, maybe I really was just causing drama. But then I would roll over and feel the ache in my ribs, the stiffness in my jaw, the scars on my skin. And I remembered. I hadn't caused this. I hadn't imagined this. I had survived this. Slowly, I began to build a different kind of family. The foster family wasn't perfect, but they were kind. The woman who took me in left little notes on the kitchen counter reminding me to eat breakfast. The man taught me how to change a tire. Their kids treated me like I belonged, like I wasn't just some broken stranger dropped into their home. For the first time, I felt a glimpse of what family could actually mean. Still, the trial loomed over me. I was called to testify. Sitting in that courtroom, my hands sweating, my voice trembling, I told the truth again. I described the years of silence, the nights of fear, the bruises, the broken bones. I looked at my stepfather as I spoke, and for once, he didn't look powerful. He looked small. But when my eyes drifted to my mother, sitting beside him, her face hard and unflinching, I felt the wound reopen. She never once looked at me. She never once reached for me. She had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. The verdict wasn't the dramatic justice I had dreamed of. He was convicted of misdemeanor assault, not the full weight of the abuse he had inflicted. He served some time, went to counseling, did the bare minimum. My mother stood by him through it all. And me? I was left to stitch myself back together. After the trial, after the paperwork and the verdict and the sterile language of the court system, life didn't suddenly become easy. Justice was supposed to feel like freedom, but instead it felt like ashes in my mouth. Because the truth is, the justice system doesn't give you back the years you lost. It doesn't erase the nights you prayed for silence, the days you hid behind long sleeves, the moments you begged your own mother to see you. It doesn't mend the hole left when the person who should have loved you most decides you were never worth defending. I had dreamed, foolishly, that once the truth was out, my mother would change her mind. That she would see the evidence, hear my words, and finally admit what she had allowed. I imagined her running to me in tears, begging for forgiveness, holding me in her arms like the little girl I once was. But she never did. Instead, she doubled down. She told relatives that I was a liar, that I had ruined her life, that I had betrayed my own family. Some believed her. Others stayed quiet, too afraid to get involved. Holidays came and went, but no phone call, no card, no olive branch arrived. I had been erased. And yet, in that emptiness, something surprising began to grow. I discovered that I could exist without her. That I could breathe without her approval, that I could stand without her love propping me up. For so long, I had believed that I needed her to survive. But when she cast me out, I learned that survival was already in my blood. I graduated high school while living with my foster family. They cheered louder for me than anyone ever had. When I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I felt like I was walking away from more than a school, I was walking away from a prison I had never deserved. College came next, though it wasn't easy. The trauma followed me like a shadow, making trust feel impossible, making sleep a battlefield. But I kept going. I wrote papers, I worked part-time jobs, I learned what it meant to shape a life on my own terms. There were nights I broke down, nights I wanted to quit, nights when the loneliness howled louder than any applause could quiet. But each time, I remembered that bathroom mirror, the reflection of my battered face, and the promise I made to myself, I would not let his fists, or her silence, be the end of me. Years passed. Slowly, therapy helped. Friendships helped. Love helped. Piece by piece, I built a version of myself that wasn't defined by their cruelty. I built a future that didn't include them. And then, one day, I saw them again. It was years later, in a grocery store of all places. I turned down an aisle, and there they were, my mother and stepfather, standing side by side, older but eerily unchanged. For a moment, time folded in on itself, and I was a child again, terrified and voiceless. My chest tightened, my palms sweated, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But I didn't run. I stood my ground. I lifted my chin. My mother's eyes met mine, and in that instant, I saw something flicker. Maybe shame, maybe anger, maybe nothing at all. She opened her mouth, as if to speak, but I turned away. I walked past them, groceries in hand, my steps steady, my spine unbroken. Because the truth is, I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not an apology, not an explanation, not even acknowledgement. Their chapter in my life was over. I had written my own ending, one where I survived. One where I found strength in the very places they tried to break me. So yes, I reported my stepfather's abuse. And yes, my mother disowned me for causing drama. But what they didn't realize is that their betrayal freed me. It freed me from the chains of silence, from the desperate need for approval, from the belief that love must be earned through pain. I am not their victim anymore. I am my own survivor, my own protector, my own family. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt silenced, if you've ever been told that your pain is drama or family business, hear me now, your truth matters. Your story matters. You matter. I am living proof. Even after that moment in the grocery store, life wasn't magically free of shadows. Healing is not a straight line, and I won't lie and say that walking past them erased the past. Trauma doesn't dissolve with a single act of courage. It lingers. It hides in the corners of your mind, waiting to rise up when you least expect it. There were nights when I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced I was back in that house. Sometimes, I'd hear a voice raised in anger on a television show and find my heart racing as if it were happening to me. Even years later, there were days when I questioned myself, wondered if I had done the right thing, if speaking out had really been worth the cost. But then I'd remind myself of the truth: silence would have killed me. Speaking out saved my life. Therapy became a lifeline. For the first time, I had a space where I wasn't told to keep things quiet, where my pain wasn't minimized, where my tears weren't seen as weakness. I learned to put words to what I had endured: abuse, manipulation, betrayal. Naming it didn't erase it, but it stripped it of some of its power. Slowly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself that had been stolen. I rediscovered laughter, not the nervous, muffled kind I had perfected as a child, but full, unguarded laughter that spilled out freely. I learned what it meant to trust people who didn't want to hurt me. I let myself dream of a future that wasn't dictated by fear. College was where I built my first chosen family. Friends who sat with me when nightmares left me shaken. Professors who believed in my potential when I doubted myself. People who showed me that love isn't conditional, that care doesn't require silence or sacrifice. One of the hardest lessons was learning that it was okay to be angry. For so long, I had swallowed my rage because I believed it made me ungrateful or dramatic. But anger is not the enemy, injustice is. And my anger was not only valid, it was necessary. It pushed me to create boundaries, to protect myself, to demand better. With time, I started writing about my story. At first, it was just for myself, messy journal entries scrawled in the middle of the night. But then I began sharing small pieces with others, and something incredible happened. People wrote back. Survivors told me that my words mirrored their own experiences, that they felt less alone. For the first time, my pain wasn't just pain. It was purpose. I began volunteering at a local shelter, working with kids who had stories that looked too much like mine. I listened when they whispered the things they thought no one would believe. I told them the truth mattered, that they mattered. I became the voice I once needed to hear. But even as I built this new life, I sometimes found myself mourning the one I never got. I mourned the mother I wished I had, the woman who should have chosen me, defended me, loved me without condition. I grieved the birthdays she missed, the milestones she refused to share, the empty space where her presence should have been. Grief and healing can exist side by side. And in my story, they do. There's one moment that stands out, years after everything, when I truly understood how far I'd come. I was at a friend's wedding, standing in a room filled with joy, when someone raised a glass and said, "To family." For a split second, my chest tightened, because that word had always been poison for me. But then I looked around at the people I had chosen, the people who had chosen me, and I realized something: family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, loyalty, and care. That realization was worth everything. I won't pretend the scars are gone. I still carry them, on my body, in my memories, in the quiet moments when the past echoes louder than I'd like. But those scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof that I survived what was meant to destroy me. And when I think back to that moment, standing in the kitchen, my mother telling me I was no longer her child, I no longer feel only pain. I feel power. Because in disowning me, she gave me the greatest gift she never intended, the freedom to build a life that was mine alone. So here I am. Not broken, not silenced, not erased. I am living, breathing proof that survival is possible, that truth can cut through even the deepest lies, that love can be found beyond the walls of blood and obligation. And if you are listening to this, if you've ever been told that speaking up makes you dramatic, if you've ever been punished for telling the truth, if you've ever been disowned for daring to survive, know this, you are not alone. I carried the weight of silence for too long, but I am laying it down now. And maybe, in hearing my story, you can lay some of yours down too. Because yes, I reported my stepfather's abuse. And yes, my mother disowned me. But neither of them get to write the ending. That's mine. And I choose to end it here, with survival, with freedom, with a future that belongs to me.